Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am so pumped to have you here today because we are looking at something incredibly powerful that completely redefines how we build our future. Seriously, think about the messaging we constantly hear growing up. We're conditioned to believe that our lives are defined by these massive, explosive events, right? We literally hold our breath waiting for the dramatic turning points. The high school graduation, that one acceptance letter, the big championship game, or landing that first major job. It's like we think these grand milestones magically shape who we are. But the source material we're unpacking today, it flips that entirely on its head. Today, we're exploring the transformative power of tiny adolescent habits. Because it turns out, it's actually the microscopic, seemingly insignificant daily choices that construct the very foundation of a teenager's entire future.
So let's jump right into section 1, the daily reality check. It's time to do a little audit of your day.
Okay, let's dive into this by asking the core question of our explainer. How do tiny habits quietly build your future? Notice that word, quietly. We're not talking about loud, celebrated achievements that everyone claps for. We're talking about the silent, under-the-radar routines that you barely even realize you're doing. And there's actually a fascinating psychological reason for this. Our brains are basically incredibly efficient machines. To save energy, your brain takes actions you repeat and pushes them down into the basal ganglia. It automates them, so you don't have to actively think about them anymore. You literally stop making conscious decisions and start running on autopilot. But behind the scenes, that autopilot is quietly laying down the concrete foundation of the physical and mental architecture you're going to carry right into adulthood.
Let's do a quick mental inventory of a standard 24 hours for you. Really think about it. First off, how late do you sleep? Are you consistently banking 8 to 10 hours, or are you pushing midnight every single night, slowly accumulating this massive sleep debt that just degrades your cognitive function? Next, what do you eat when you're stressed or just bored between meals? Is it actual fuel for your body, or are you mindlessly reaching for highly processed sugar just to get a quick dopamine hit? Do you consciously move your body, or are you mostly stationary for hours on end? And perhaps most importantly, how do you handle the inevitable stress of growing up? Because things get tough. When they do you rely on substances to cope? Do you talk to someone to actually process those emotions? Or do you just mindlessly doom scroll on your phone to numb out the anxiety? Listen, these are not just random trivial questions. Grabbing that donut or scrolling for 2 hours at 1 a.m., these are the exact microscopic choices that our source material warns us about.
Which brings us nicely to section 2, the big moment myth.
Now, what's really interesting here is how this pits a super pervasive societal myth directly against the scientific reality of habit formation. We've all seen the Hollywood movie version of growing up. There is always that one big, defining moment, usually accompanied by a dramatic soundtrack and a slow-motion realization where the main character suddenly figures out their entire life path. It is a great trope for a 90-minute movie, but honestly, it's a terrible roadmap for reality. A teen's future is not built with a movie clapperboard. It's a biological reality that's much closer to a seedling slowly growing into a massive tree. It's built by daily tiny habits turning into adult lives. Your future isn't a cinematic montage. It is quite literally the compound interest of what you did on a totally boring, unremarkable Tuesday afternoon. Let's zoom out a bit to the macro view with section 3, habits become adult lives. Let's see how this builds, because understanding this fundamental progression is where things get incredibly real. Step 1 is the adolescent choice. You make a single choice to stay up until 3 a.m. playing video games instead of resting up for a busy day. Step 2 is when those repeated choices solidify into a permanent routine. You do it enough times and suddenly you've formed a deeply ingrained habit of chronic sleep deprivation. Your brain's circadian rhythm physically rewires itself to this new, unhealthy normal. And then comes step 3. Those habits inevitably turn into adult lives. That teenager who normalized exhaustion becomes an adult professional who struggles with daytime fatigue, massive brain fog, and chronic stress at their job. The progression is undeniably linear. In adolescence, these choices become habits, and those habits literally become the reality of your future.
So the crucial point here is that these habits don't just exist in a vacuum. They directly shape the 4 massive pillars of your adult existence. Let's break these down, starting with physical health. The nutritional and movement habits you establish right now are actively programming your metabolic rate, your bone density, and your cardiovascular health for decades to come. You are literally building the physical vessel you'll inhabit at age 40. Then consider mental health. When a teenager develops a habit of suppressing their emotions or using a screen to distract from anxiety, they're wiring their brain to default to avoidance. In adulthood, this manifests as chronic anxiety or depression because the coping mechanisms are fundamentally flawed from the start. Third, look at school and job performance. The ability to focus, to manage time, to delay gratification, these are all muscles that are built through the daily habit of sitting down and doing hard work even when you really don't want to. If you build a habit of giving up when you're frustrated, that directly translates to how you'll handle a difficult project in your future career. And finally, relationships. How you communicate right now, whether you blow up in anger, bottle things up, or actively listen and talk things out, dictates your conflict resolution style, and that exact style will determine the health of every single romantic, platonic, and professional relationship you have as an adult. Absolutely everything is intricately connected to those tiny daily decisions.
Moving on to Section 4, the power of one upgrade. It's time to take control today.
You do not have to be perfect. I really want you to let that truth sink in for a moment. Securing a healthy, successful future is absolutely not about flawless execution. In fact, the source material highlights that the intense pressure to be perfect is exactly what causes so many teenagers to just throw their hands up and give up on healthy habits altogether. It's that classic all-or-nothing psychological trap. You eat one bad meal, you assume the whole diet is ruined, so you just keep eating junk. But human biology and psychology do not demand perfection. They simply respond to consistency. Building a great life isn't about completely overhauling your entire identity by tomorrow morning. It is entirely about making small, manageable adjustments and letting time do the heavy lifting for you.
The source material gives us a brilliant, scientifically backed strategy here. Just pick one habit today to upgrade. Don't look at this as a chore. Look at it as a high-yield investment. The reason this strategy is so incredibly effective comes down to the concept of self-efficacy and momentum. When you attempt to change everything at once, your brain panics and resists. But when you make just one tiny swap, say, committing to getting to sleep just 30 minutes earlier, you create what's called a small win. That small win releases a hit of dopamine, which signals to your brain that, hey, you actually are capable of change. Maybe tomorrow your upgrade is swapping out just one highly processed junk food item for one healthier, nutrient-dense snack. Or maybe the next time you feel that wave of overwhelming anxiety hit, your single upgrade is simply messaging a friend to talk it out instead of isolating yourself and bottling all that stress up inside. These microscopic wins build momentum. One upgrade proves to yourself that you have control over your actions, and that naturally cascades into more positive choices. Just one upgrade. That is quite literally all it takes to shift the long-term trajectory of your entire life.
I want to leave you with a final, powerful thought drawn straight from our source material. Future you is watching what you do today. When you make that tiny, seemingly insignificant upgrade this afternoon, I want you to imagine the adult version of yourself, 5, 10, or even 20 years from now, nodding back at you in profound gratitude. You hold the power to build them a better life right now. So what is the single, microscopic choice you can make in the next hour that the adult version of you will be incredibly grateful for? Think about that, and I'll see you in the next explainer.